Welcome to Steps Forward with Ricky, a weekly walking podcast designed to help you take steps forward in your life and your day. Happy Monday morning. Happy whatever day this is. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately because I love podcasts. Well, I love them now. And it's a great way to learn. You know, if you're in a certain industry or you're starting something new, a really great way to learn is to learn from others. Fun fact, I really had only listened to a few podcasts before starting my own podcast. I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I didn't get the idea to start a podcast because I was passionate about podcasts. I didn't religiously listen to them, but I liked the idea of having a space to express myself. And I liked the idea of doing it to a group of people that wanted to hear what I had to say and how they can use my stories or information or advice to better their life. And to be honest with you, it betters my life, this podcast. And just on a side note, you know, starting this podcast has really been a great thing for me. And it's always a good reminder that our ideas matter. And more importantly, our gifts matter. And what I mean by that is, you know, my whole life, I've always sort of battled with understanding who I am and who I'm trying to be and what I'm supposed to put out into the world. I'm sure that you can relate to that. You know, everyone says to find your purpose and find what fulfills you and use your gifts and use your skills. And like, no one actually tells you what the fuck that means. And I think that for me, had I thought about my skills in terms of like, how do I edit or how do I record or how do I do this? And I probably wouldn't have started the podcast. But I decided that instead of looking at it like that, I looked at it like, what are my gifts? Right? Because people often forget or they overlook that you can learn the how, you can learn the technical stuff, the things that you might not be as natural at, you can outsource certain things, but what are your gifts? And when I thought about certain gifts of mine, the only thing that kept coming up to me was communication and my ability to communicate. And maybe you're sitting, well, you honestly, if you're sitting right now, I'm going to be pissed. You're walking right now because you should be walking. And there are certain things that you're trying to do, or you have an idea, or maybe you're just feeling unfulfilled or you're feeling lost. I want you to stop for a second and stop thinking about the how and think about why you want to do it. And the gifts that are going to come from you doing it. This is totally off topic, but I was just thinking on the way here how like I had not really been listening to a lot of podcasts before I started a podcast. And I think that if I had told someone that I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know how to do X, Y, or Z, and I didn't really listen to a lot of podcasts, they probably would have talked me out of it. How many ideas and goals and dreams and vacations and thoughts do people talk you out on a daily basis? It's like, why do we even tell people sometimes, right? Just so they can bring us down, like we don't already bring ourselves down enough. And I don't know. I'm so happy, honestly, that I didn't tell anyone that I was starting a podcast because I didn't. Once I decided it, then I put it out into the world, but I didn't ask anyone what they thought about it. I didn't care what anyone thought about it because I knew that it was a gift. That I could take a gift that I had and I could use it in this platform. And who knows what will come, right? But instead of focusing on the how the hell was I going to make this happen, I focused on why I wanted to make it happen because I wanted a place of self-expression, but I also wanted to help you transform your life and live in alignment and take steps forward and find your thing and find your gifts and know that we all have fucking obstacles in our life. And it's so important for me to have a space where I feel like I can be me. And I hope that when you're listening to this, as you're walking and you're putting one foot in front of the other, I hope that you feel like you can be you in this space too. That your dreams aren't too big and your thoughts are, whatever it is that you believe about yourself that's negative aren't true and your ideas matter, and that you're definitely not alone. Not alone in your anxiety or your depression or your pain or anything, because I'm right here with you. Which leads me to the topic today. First of all, as always, you're 5 minutes in, but if you're not walking, get up, put your shoes on, whatever you got to do, and let's take a break. Because we all need to take a walking break. We all need to put one foot in front of the other. I'll give you a second to do that. Your second's over. It was like not even a second. I was thinking about, this space for me as a podcast and as a self-expressive person. And, I've really kind of been struggling lately. And I feel that instead of trying to be this like teacher or this, here, do this or do that, I just kind of want to talk about what I've been struggling with. Because it's not a new struggle. And maybe you're struggling with it. And I think we do our best work when we're honest. And this is what this platform is for me. It's a space where I can be honest. And maybe it will inspire you to be honest with yourself. So I've been struggling lately. Nothing new. I've been struggling just with that. I feel like the days are long sometimes. And I feel like something's missing sometimes. Like I wake up and I feel good, and then I get anxious or I feel bored, and then I want to get high. Or I want to do something that has nothing to do with the thing that I should be doing. Or I'm like thinking about my life, or I'm just like, oh, when is it going to be 4:00? Because I don't know, 4:00 makes me feel like the day is over and the night has begun, or the evening has begun. And I've always had these thoughts. I don't know if you can relate to that, or you can relate to maybe one or two of those thoughts. But I was listening to this podcast the other day, the third podcast I've ever listened to, and it was talking about addiction. I'm not a poster child for addiction. I'm not an addiction specialist. To me, I know that there are so many forms of addiction, but to me, addiction is something that you feel powerless to, because you feel powerless within. I don't give a fuck what you're using. You could be on your phone all day. You're addicted to your phone. You're addicted to your work. You're addicted to the high that you get when you eat chocolate. You're addicted to the high of a new relationship. You're just addicted to a feeling because there's a feeling in you that you're missing. So addiction to me, I think everyone has addict tendencies, and it's a spectrum, right? And obviously I'm not talking about heroin, and I'm not talking about those kind of things, although they've done a lot of studies and they've come to see that people who use heroin and people who smoke pot, they feel the same fucking way. Kind of empty. I know you're like, this is so depressing, but I promise, it's going to be better. Because if I were to pretend that I don't feel this way, that I don't feel kind of empty sometimes, that the days are long, then maybe you would think that you're alone in that. And when I was listening to this podcast, this woman, this doctor, she was talking about this other addiction that we don't talk about, which is dopamine. I'm a dopamine addict. I've literally figured it out. I'm not a pot addict. I'm not a food addict. I'm not a destructive human being. I am a dopamine addict. And let me take a second. I have to look at my phone so I don't screw this all up. But if you're not familiar with what dopamine is, it's a neurotransmitter. Your body makes it, and your nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. A lot of people refer to it as like your pleasure chemical, your feel-good chemical. So it's really similar to serotonin. It gives you this high and happiness. So what is dopamine? Dopamine is in chocolate, right? When you eat chocolate and you like feel excited and good. Dopamine is that first hit of that pot that you're smoking, right? You feel good, you feel relaxed. Dopamine is anything that makes you feel good, right? It raises your vibration. It elevates your mood, whether it's good for you or whether it's bad for you. So when the day is fucking long and you don't know what to do with yourself, so you start eating, you're getting a dopamine hit because food, right, is a chemical, gives you a high. There are things in it. And so you're getting this short-term dopamine hit. And the reason I'm so interested in this now is because it makes so much sense to me as to why the days feel so long. As to why when I don't feel like I have purpose, or when I don't feel like my life is stimulated, or the days are moving, or I don't feel really good, why I feel the need to want to escape myself. I'm lacking dopamine. You might be lacking dopamine. You might not even fucking realize it. Especially if you've gone through trauma, or you have stress, or you have unhealed things in your body, you're actually more prone to being an addict. You're more prone to feeling these like long periods of loneliness and these long periods of trauma. And so you throw yourself into all these different things thinking that the pattern will change. It never does, because you don't actually deal with the real issue. And the real issue is within you. And there are a lot of things that I deal with on a daily basis that I don't talk about, which is number one, my ADHD. I know people say they have ADD and everyone and their grandma has ADD, but I have ADHD and I've had it since I was 7 years old. I take Vyvanse every single day. It's not something that I'm ashamed of. It's also not something that people talk about as much. I think they're starting to now. But something that I've learned recently is that when you have ADD or ADHD, your need for dopamine is so much greater. Like, you don't even realize it. Your need to be high or to feel busy or to feel elevated is, maybe a normal person needs that at a 5. Someone like me, maybe someone like you, they need that at like a 10 or 11. So no wonder the fucking days feel long to me. There's like a certain part of my brain, right? Maybe a certain part of your brain that is just wired differently. I'm just different in that way. I'm cool with it. But it's a struggle because my need for stimulation is so high that I want to get high, or I want to be high. And I've been struggling with this my whole life. And I always thought it was like just because I was self-destructive. And I'm sure that aspects of it are. But I really think it's this thing of my ADHD and that need to be high, but also this idea that I don't have the right coping skills to cope when life is just sort of normal, or that I have filled my days up with things that keep elevating this high for me that I don't even know what it's like to exist in the in-between. And it's really exhausting. Like, I'm exhausted. And it's exhausting when your brain is always moving. It's exhausting when your body has to always be moving. It's exhausting when you're trying to find these answers. And it's exhausting when you feel like you can't take a break. Because if you take a break, then you're sitting and then you're antsy and then you need another hit of whatever the hit is. And it's really, I've been struggling with it because all my life I thought it was like lack of purpose or like lack of concentration or lack of this. And it's really not. Like, I definitely feel that I need to figure certain things out. But I really believe that there's this part of me that's internally antsy. It's like wrapped up in some trauma, maybe some pain. Maybe there's some self-limiting beliefs. Maybe it's like a little bit of how my brain is wired. But my need for stimulation and dopamine is so overwhelming. I don't know what to do with it sometimes. Why do you think I walk all the time? I love to walk, but do you think that I walk because I just want to get 1 million steps in, or because I want to be super thin, or I only care about my health? It's because I have so much energy. I don't know where to channel it sometimes. It's easier for me to walk than it is for me to sit. It's easier for me to walk than it is for me to focus on something. Because if I'm focusing on something that's not giving me that 100% dopamine hit, I don't fucking want to focus on it. Think about your life for a second. Like the relationships that you're in, the job that you're in, the food that you eat, the drugs that you take, the alcohol that you drink, your habits, your routine. Like how many things in a day are you just looking to elevate your mind and just be in a different space? Dopamine's fucking terrifying because if you don't use it correctly, if you don't understand how to use dopamine, then you use it incorrectly and you get attached to the things that give you short releases, like me, like getting high, right? My body and mind craves getting high. What do you think it's craving? It's just craving the hit of where it takes me, right? Because my body is it's missing dopamine. That's what it is. It's when you don't have enough dopamine, you need more of it. So it's like, think of it just like in a very simple terms, like when you feel depressed, you're not giving off serotonin. You're not feeling excited, right? So you need something to elevate you. That's why they give you antidepressants, but antidepressants only work so much because you have to be able to naturally do it for yourself. And I've just been struggling. I think I've been struggling, because I'm super aware of it now and there's no escape. And I think that's a great thing, a beautiful thing when you're super aware of something, but then you have to approach it and you have to deal with it. And it's really important that we don't label ourselves. And so I'm not saying that I'm an addict, but I know that I have addict tendencies. And I know the way that my brain is wired makes me more prone to need more hits of dopamine or need more stimulation. But what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to look within a little more and see if it's in there. I'm always going to have to move my body and be energetic, and you might always have to do certain things to get to a certain place, and these are just sort of who you are. But what if you went a little deeper? Like, are there certain things in your life that you think are giving you energy or that you think are making you feel good, but they're really causing you long-term pain? Because I took an inventory of my life the other day and was like, holy shit, like dopamine after dopamine after dopamine hit. And it's like, for what? Can't I find that fulfillment within? I know that I can. I know that you can. And I know that I have in a lot of ways, right? I've taken a million steps forward, even if I've taken a million steps backwards. But something that's really helped me with anything in my life that I struggle with is understanding it. Not from an emotional point of view. Understanding the science behind it. How does the brain work? How does addiction work? How does trauma work? Where does it live in your body? How does it live in your body? I mean, when you can't connect to something emotionally and you don't understand it emotionally, the next best thing that you can do is understand it from a scientific level, or just understand it. From taking yourself out of the equation, like, okay, what is addiction? What is dopamine? What does this mean? What does this mean? What is procrastination? I can't say that word. What is this? What is that, right? And so what I've been trying to do lately is I've noticed that I have the same routines and same patterns of like feeling bored and then needing that dopamine hit, or feeling anxious or overwhelmed and needing to get high or needing to be high. And I sit there and I ask myself, like, okay, number one, what else can I do? Like, besides wanting to get high, or besides want to procrastinate, or besides need this hit, or besides overwork, like, what else can I do? What's the smallest thing that I can do that could give me that rush that is good for me? So my thing is, I do 3 different things. Like, when I'm feeling lack of purpose, or I'm antsy, or the day is long, or I'm not stimulated enough and I want to channel it into bad energy, I channel it into something good. So I always take a walk, right? Take a 10-minute walk, 20-minute walk. It allows the impulse to pass, that need to get high, that need to be high. And I also try to do something that I enjoy. So that's something that's been really big for me, is that I've been able to stop myself when I feel bored, or I can't concentrate, or I'm antsy, or I'm anxious. And I try to do something that I enjoy that has nothing to do with things that I do on a daily basis. That could literally be a dance party. That could be reading an article, listening to a podcast, going for a walk somewhere pretty. It could be baking. I honestly hate baking. But it could be anything that brings me, that is fun. Because fun's a great release of dopamine, as long as it's not destructive. And as long as you're not distracting yourself with it. So I always ask myself, like, okay, can I do 10 more minutes of this task? And then I'm going to see how I feel. And I'm like, okay, I still feel a little anxious. I'm going to do something fun for 10 minutes. I'm allowed to have a fun break. You can have a fun break. I'm trying to replace my need for dopamine on a scientific level of like, this is how my brain is. Maybe this is how your brain is. Like, I definitely need to be doing more, I think, than the average person. That's just how I'm wired. But I'm trying to also understand it and say, okay, could I meditate? Could I breathe? Could I sit? Is this a deeper thing? Is this just I'm used to having to do things all the time? Do I need to take this extra walk? Or is this just me wanting to escape, or wanting to be high, or wanting to be elevated? And I wanted to talk about it today because we all have different ways of escaping. And we're all wired different. So not everyone is, what might work for me might not work for you. And no one can really tell you that you're not a certain way, that you don't need certain things. Like, you are you, and this is who you are, and you know you best. But I challenge you to look at the patterns in your life and look at your life and where you feel like you're understimulated, maybe overstimulated. And maybe there are parts of your life where you can take inventory and you can say to yourself, like, okay, I know that between these times I get anxious, or I know that I'm unstimulated between these times, or maybe at this point in my life I feel this way. What if I tried something different to get the high? And what I mean by that is, what if it was something so simple where you learned to breathe a little bit, or you just talked about it, or you found a different way to elevate yourself? Because if you keep doing the same thing happens. Nothing. And it's just a good reminder for me, for you, that we're always having to work on these things. And I know that for me, no matter what job I do, no matter who I'm with, and no matter where I go, if I can't figure out a way to feel good inside and sustained inside and feel like the days aren't long enough, right? I know that everyone, people enhance our life, and experiences enhance our life, and hobbies enhance our life. That's all very true. And finding your purpose enhances your life. But if you don't feel good internally, and you're still struggling with the same addictions and the same behaviors and the same things that you are using to get high or to feel high, it doesn't fucking matter what comes into your life. I swear to God. I used to think it did. I used to think, like, if I found my purpose or my person or where I wanted to live or this or that, like, it would all come together. But it doesn't work like that, because we all have these beliefs and these habits and these wires of our brain that we have to really understand. And it's not about being only happy on your own. It's just about recognizing, like, what about you keeps coming no matter where you go? Like, what's showing up no matter how good you're doing in work, or how great your relationship is, or how much you work out? Like, what keeps coming up for you? What is the thing that you need to keep elevated? What is it for you that you're like, you know what? I feel like I have to escape, or I want to get high, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And why? I have all these things in my life. I don't know the answer why. I just know internally that I am trying to find more peace within. And I'm trying to not be so judgmental of it either. And to realize that we all get bored, and we all feel lonely, and we all feel these things that I think that I feel. I know that you feel them too. But can we deal with them differently? Can we find a different way to cope? Because everything that I've used in my life to get high, or to be high, to escape, or to distract, like, has literally never worked for me. I mean, certain things have, the walking and that kind of stuff. But learn about the things that you struggle with. Don't just think that don't avoid them. You don't have to fix them right away to learn about them. You can still just be curious about them. Sometimes curiosity is what leads to healing. And sometimes it's too much to handle all at once. You have to just look at the facts and not so much look at the emotions. And the facts, for me, right? I look at the facts and I'm like, oh, okay. This is not even about my emotions. It's just about the fact that this is how dopamine works. This is how my brain works. I'm ADHD. These are my patterns. This is what's happened in the past. These are the facts. And then I can do what I want with the facts. I can better my life, or I can stay the same. You can better your life, or you can stay the same. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. And, things are good. I just think that I'm struggling with something that I've always been struggling with. And I'm definitely feeling ready to deal with it. So hopefully this encourages you and inspires you to stop escaping, to get curious with the things that you struggle with, to understand how the brain works, how addiction works, how dopamine works, how your habits work, and then be able to take it and say, you know what? I'm going to make one or two changes today. Instead of doing that, I'm going to do this. Instead of getting high like that, I'm going to seek the high in a healthy way. And just know that you're never alone in the things that you struggle with. That everyone has a story and a struggle. And if I can share mine with you and they can help you with yours, that's what I'm here for. I hope you had a really great walk and you got some steps in. That's a great way to release all those emotions, and you drink water, and that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I always love to hear from you. I feel like we're friends, and I mean, I'm your friend, even though I don't know who's listening to this right now, but I feel that if you're listening to this and you continue to week after week, then we definitely understand each other. And I'm here to help you take steps forward in your life. And I'm trying to take some steps forward in my life too. So we're doing this together. You don't realize that this podcast holds me accountable too. So I hope you had a great walk. Drink water and DM me if you liked this podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review on Apple Podcast, not just a rating. You have to actually leave a review because it really helps the podcast grow. And yeah, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful that you take time to walk with me and to listen and to learn. And I'm really excited for the next part of the journey because we're coming up on 8 episodes. This is episode 8, which means we're almost at 10. And I've already learned so much. So I'm excited to take this and see where it can go and keep bettering myself. And I hope that you keep bettering yourself and come on the journey with me. You could always take steps forward.